Okay, I'm back with another political talk video. So it's been a long time since I've done one of these. I know I'm not the biggest YouTube channel out there, and I don't have like the budget or production values to do like a whole talk show or podcast on politics. So I really only these days talk about issues that I feel very passionate about or have a lot to say about. So it's been a while, and I wanted to talk about what just happened, which is the presidential debate between President Biden and former President Trump. And I want to take some time to talk about that, since I do have a few things to talk about. But I also have a few other things I want to talk about that have happened over the last month or so that I also wanted to just bring up, but I had some thoughts on, but not enough to do a whole video on. So yeah, that's basically the introduction. So the other night was the first of two presidential debates between Biden and Trump. And at first I thought it was strange that there was a debate before the conventions, because at least not that I can remember, if there had been one, it's been a long time since there was one before the actual conventions occurred. But since Biden's the incumbent, Trump's trying to run again for the presidency, and both basically won their primaries, since both primaries had their fair share of issues, which again, something I want to talk about, but didn't really have too many thoughts on. Just that it was pretty obvious going in that both were going to win anyway. So they had their debate, and I'll say this. Trump lied more than Biden, but he appeared more confident whenever he answered the questions. Biden, though, the best way to put it, he looked like he had maybe had like a stroke, or maybe he had some sort of issue physically. Because like for the first half of the debate, I mean, he didn't really... Like, he could not keep his mouth shut. He looked like he was tired. And he stumbled a lot to answer. By the end, he had a few good comebacks to some of Trump's lies, which I'll get back to in a sec. But yeah, in just terms of what was said, Biden did have better answers. Trump, though, looked like he was more prepared for the debate. Now, yeah, when you actually get to the substance of what was said, like I said, it was revealed that Trump lied over 30 times. There were times where he, instead of answering a question Dana or Jake asked him, went back to just repeat some talking point about immigration or Biden on some other issues that Biden had, like with some of his his son's convictions and stuff like that. Although Trump still has his convictions, we'll get back to later. And I feel part of the problem with the debate. Well, there were two main issues. One, there was no live audience, which I was surprised at that. For better or worse, I think maybe it did help in some ways with Biden, but also I think it also hurt Trump not having an audience to actually cheer him on. So, but also I think it was a horrible job of both Dana and Jake to let Trump get away with lying. I don't think they actually called him out at all for any of his lies, and they, I think, said they were going to live fact check, which I don't think they ever did. And I think they maybe shut off his mic once or twice for going over. Now, Biden did, like I said, stumble a few times, but at least whenever... And there were times he struggled to answer questions, but at least when Dana and Jake basically told him, like, time was up, he at least did stop. Though it did sound awkward because he was talking slow so much. So, like I said, it did look like, at least on camera, Biden lost. When you actually get to the substance, sure, Biden at least was more honest. He did lie a couple times, but I think part of it was either he couldn't remember what he was saying or he lost his train of thought, which again hurt Biden, because a lot of average people, they're just going to watch the debate and then go to bed. They're not going to pay attention to the fact checkers or watch the analysis or play-by-play after the debates. So this being the first of two debates, and then there's still potentially a vice presidential debate later this year, yeah, it was not a good night for Biden. Biden did occasionally call out Trump on his lies, and when Trump did attack Biden's sons, he did defend them, which, credit for that, Biden did a good job on that. But, I was watching the debate, and even though I am a Democrat, it was a bad night for Biden. So, not sure how it's going to affect him coming up to the conventions, but this does raise a question that a lot of people have been asking over the last few days. Should Biden immediately drop out or even potentially resign as president and have someone replace him as the nominee? Because that is, I guess, the silver lining of having the first debate before the convention, is that after seeing Biden, a lot of people are probably thinking we need someone to replace him for the good of both the Democratic Party and the country in case Trump were to actually win. Now, this raises the question, who could replace Biden? Well, there are a few names that I've seen in various articles and videos. Obviously, the most, obvious person would be Vice President Harris, or maybe someone in the cabinet like Buttigieg. Now, you could say, it would be good. On the one hand, you'd have like the first female president and the first female president of color, obviously. Then you'd have someone like, say, Buttigieg. Would be the first openly LGBT plus president. But from what I've seen of the few polls that have asked questions like this even before the debate, they're not very popular. So then you have other names that are either governors or some senators. Governors like Newsom of California, Whitmer of Michigan, Hochul of New York. But most governors that are potential either aren't very popular nationwide, or they don't have the name recognition nationwide, or you got some that have issues going on in their states right now that could affect their, ability to win in the national debate. So then you have some senators like Booker, Warden, Klobuchar, who ran in 2020, and then also someone like Bernie Sanders. But if you're going to attack Biden and Trump for their age, then it'd be an easy target to also attack Sanders for his age as well. So overall, and again, similar problem with the governors, a lot of those senators may be popular in their home states, but maybe not popular enough nationwide to win, since after all, Biden still beat all of them in the 2020 primaries. And then one other issue to bring up would be the impact of having RFK Jr., who, real quick, I will say this, going back to the first presidential election I really paid attention to in 2012 between Obama and Romney, I was only 17 at the time, and so I wouldn't have been able to vote anyway. But I thought it was strange that even though we do have third-party independent candidates, they weren't allowed on the debate stage, and even in the presidential election since then, we still haven't had them on debate stages. Now, again, I'm not sure if it helped Biden and Trump or hurt Biden and Trump by not having RFK Jr., because he did like his own town hall style thing, and he's done interviews since the debates talking about how neither of them are fit to be presidents, which could help him. And then, of course, we still have the Libertarian Party, Green Party, other independent candidates who could take votes away. I've seen some articles comparing this election, 2012, to 1992, where if it had been just Bush Sr. and Clinton, Bush Sr. probably would have won re-election. But when Perot was in the election as well and he was on the debate stage, he took a lot of votes from both. And a lot of people think that's what helped Clinton win. So if RFK Jr., I still think he should have been on the debate stage, but he wasn't. But I still think him being there, everything going on with Trump's convictions, and now Biden not doing great on the debate stage, it could help RFK Jr. So, hit my desk and moved the laptop. I still think there is a possibility that a lot of Democrats are thinking we need to replace Biden with someone else. But then the question is, who do we replace him with only about 4.5 months, if not even, about 4.5 months until the election, since the end. Now, again, the good thing about having the first debate now, before the convention, the Democratic Party could try and find someone else, but, you could have a dark horse candidate. In a way, Barack Obama was a dark horse candidate. He was a one-term senator, and a lot of people thought it was going to be Clinton initially, and then he came in, and he ended up winning the presidency. But could they find another dark horse candidate in just a few months, though? That I'm not sure. It would be hard at this point for anyone who doesn't have the nationwide name recognition to beat Trump. Now, sure, Trump still has things like Project 2025, the 6-3 conservative Supreme Court, all these Republicans in Congress that are still on his side. That would help him get a good message out. Biden is weak. There are no Democrats that really could beat Trump, so we got to pick Trump again. That's a message that, sure, Trump still lies all the time, and he does have the criminal convictions coming up in the future, which I'm going to talk about more in a minute. So, but then the main question I think is really going to come down to is independents who saw the debate think Trump is still a liar, but Biden does not look strong. How are they going to vote? Are they going to vote for someone like RFK Jr.? Are they going to just sit out this election? And then again, if something comes up where one or even both of them are no longer the nominees next month when they have the conventions, sorry, I keep getting those two words mixed up, how will independents vote? It's too soon to know, but like I said, I had not really done a lot of top videos recently talking about political talk, because here's the thing, I do follow politics a lot, but I just don't have the time, and like I said, I'm doing this in my bedroom to really do great videos. So I wanted to talk about the first debate and then where it might lead over the next few months before the election in November. But there are a few other things that have happened over the last couple of months I want to talk about very quickly. So I'm just going to go through each one real quick. As always, I have like a little script, kind of like bullet point list of things I want to talk about. So I'm just going to go through all these really quickly, some of which I brought up a minute ago. So, obviously, a month or so ago, Trump had been convicted on all 34 counts for his tax fraud, money laundering, business fraud. And he still has a few more coming up in 2025, but that's obviously after the presidential election. Now, some of them are state crimes, some of them are federal crimes. If he is president again, yes, he could pardon himself for federal crimes, but he can't pardon himself for state crimes. And since some of the crimes he's going to be on trial for are in blue states, it's very unlikely the Democratic governors are going to pardon him. But then the ones, like in, say, Florida, the governor of Florida right now, DeSantis, could theoretically pardon him, but he still is going to face those trials. Sure, they're being pushed back a little at a time, but I mean, it's still going to be something that would affect him in his first year as president if he were to get reelected in November. Biden's son, Hunter, was also convicted, I think it was 3 counts, for his crimes for, I think it was illegally purchasing a gun, and then obviously his drug charges. But at this point, I don't think that would really affect Biden himself if he was if he was still the nominee in November for the Democratic Party. But at the same time, sure, Republicans might use it to attack Biden. It's like, well, if Democrats are going to attack Trump for his convictions, let's attack Biden for his son's convictions. But again, it's crimes his son did. They've been investigating Biden for over a year at this point, and if all they have is crimes his son committed, I doubt that's really going to sway anyone at this point. In fact, like I said, at this point, I think the presidential debate is actually going to have a larger impact on Biden being the nominee than Hunter's convictions were. Also, something I wanted to talk about a while back, but at the time I just felt like maybe I should wait to see, was who's going to be Trump's next VP. So obviously Mike Pence isn't going to be his VP again, but then it begs the question, who will be? Now there are about 5 to 10 names that keep coming up that change all the time. Current short list includes a few Republicans from Florida, where Trump now resides, including DeSantis, Marco Rubio, and I think Representative Byron Donalds. But there is a whole issue with the 12th Amendment to the Constitution, which I'm not going to get to too much on that one, that basically just says the president and the vice president typically shouldn't be from the same states. So, doubt maybe he would pick them. Then there's a few other names from across the country, Senator Vance, and then Senator Cotton, Senator Scott of South Carolina, because there's, I think, 2 Scotts. Then you got Representative Stefanik, Governor Burgum of, I think it was it North Dakota? Yeah, and then Kristi Noem was from South Dakota, but at this point, she's no longer on the short list after some issues that were revealed about her from a book she wrote. So there are a lot of names, and they keep kind of constantly changing. Like, this person's now the front runner, this person's now the front runner. Me personally, and again, I am a Democrat from Texas, so I hate to admit this, I honestly think Trump, if he had the right people suggesting this name, he would probably easily win. My governor, Greg Abbott, I think he would be the best choice for Trump to be his VP, because Abbott is a 3-term Republican governor of the 2nd largest state, and obviously Trump being from Florida now, that's 2 of the 4 largest states, and that's, what was it, a little over 70 electoral votes. That's a good amount to get just from the president and vice president winning those 2 states. There's been this talk for literally decades. Texas is slowly becoming blue again after so long of it being a red state. But getting someone like Abbott to be on the ticket with Trump would also help down ballot races in Texas, including one I'll get to in a second. And then obviously Abbott being more pro-corporate establishment of a Republican would really help solidify a lot of the donor money coming in to Trump. But at the same time, Abbott being in a wheelchair, Trump does have his, prejudice against people who are handicapped physically or mentally. So would Trump nominate my governor because he's in a wheelchair? Not necessarily, But if enough people in the party convinced him Abbott is your best chance of winning re-election at this point, Trump maybe would say, okay, fine, Abbott would be a good VP. Because Abbott and a lot of other Republicans in our state have shown their loyalty to a guy like Trump. Which brings me to the next point. The Senate election in my state. So Senator Ted Cruz is up for re-election this year. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Colin Allred seems like a really nice guy, but I think Beto O'Rourke had a better chance of beating Ted Cruz last time, and even beating Governor Abbott last time when he ran for the governor's seat, than Allred has against Cruz this time, which is also the last thing going back to the Governor Abbott point. I think Abbott winning against someone like Beto O'Rourke, who had, again, the big name recognition going back to some of the Democrats I was talking about earlier, would help with that. And, like I said, Cruz, despite not being a very popular Republican, I feel like the state is still just too red statewide for someone like Allred to win. Again, from what I've seen, Allred's a nice guy, but I still think Cruz is still going to easily win re-election. That's why I didn't really want to make this one a big video. Not much to say on that one. Let's see what else. Okay, Biden recently announced a new pathway to citizenship for migrant spouses of Americans, including American service people in the military. Now, I've often argued that we have one of the, most difficult, we're one of the most difficult countries to really achieve citizenship. And I think Biden doing this is a good thing. But doing it so close to election, I think, is going to be another Republican talking point against him. And I feel like if he had done this, say, a year or so ago, a lot of Republicans would still attack him for it, but a lot of average voters probably would have moved on from it. So yeah, it is the right thing to do humanely because, again, they're migrant spouses of Americans, including those in the military. But I think it is going to be a talking point to hurt Biden. And then if Biden's not the nominee, would whoever the new nominee is still try to continue this, including also things like Biden's student loan forgiveness. Again, something that Biden has continued a few times. I'm someone who has benefited from it. Some of my federal student loans have been forgiven, so thank you, Biden, for that one. But like I said, if Biden's no longer the nominee, would stuff like this still keep occurring? Not so sure at the moment. Also, Supreme Court, they're having a few pro-business rulings, pro-corporation rulings with the Supreme Court. It's still a 6-3 conservative court. Now, there have also been some corruption issues and I think some sort of issue regarding January 6th with both Thomas and Alito that have occurred over the last few years. And I've said before, Biden at the very least needs to get reelected because if something were to happen to either Thomas and or Alito, then if he could nominate someone to be a liberal justice to replace those two very conservative justices. But now the whole issue with Biden's health, possibly not being able to be physically and mentally capable to be president for the next 4 years, they might have to find someone else to be, if they were to find someone else to be the nominee, then that would also make it harder for them to win against Trump, who could just replace Thomas and or Alito with another conservative justice, keeping it 6-3. Because we have seen cases revolving things like money in politics, abortion rights, gun rights, that have all leaned more conservative leanings because of the court. You might occasionally get a 5-4 ruling with maybe one of the justices swinging over to vote alongside the 3 liberal justices, but it's still a 6-3 conservative court. So, yeah, not really sure if that's going to affect the presidential election, but I mean, it did kind of impact the 2016 election when, whenever Obama nominated Garland, but then obviously his seat was held up, and then Trump won, immediately replaced Garland, and then Trump got picked someone else instead of Garland, and then he had 3 people put on the Supreme Court. Especially after Ginsburg died, they rushed putting someone in there. So yeah, Supreme Court might be another thing that impacts the presidential election, but we'll just have to see where that goes. There have been a few House races that have made the news, particularly some that have been impacted by, there's been 2 in particular that I want to talk about. One, Lauren Boebert changed her district, but then she ended up winning the primary in that district, and she's likely now going to win in that district, unless the Democrat wins that, but it's a slightly more red district. The other was Representative Jamal Bowman. He lost his primary to a a Democratic candidate that received a lot of money from the Israeli AIPAC lobby. And I have issues with that, but I might go over that in another video at some point. Long story short, AIPAC has been donating a lot of money to a few races, but that's definitely one of the more, I guess, vocal and televised ones. So Bowman, being a very progressive Democrat, he lost his primary. Now he's going to be replaced with, I forgot the other guy's name. So, yeah, there have been a few other congressional races, but those are like the two main ones I want to talk about. Speaking of Israel, it's been going on for months at this point, where we've seen, I think at this point, over 35, almost 40,000 Palestinians have been killed by the Israeli military. However, at this point, very few Israeli hostages that were taken by Hamas, including some American hostages, have actually been rescued. And obviously, there's been trouble with Netanyahu and his war cabinet, and I believe there's going to be an election upcoming because of that. But there is in Israel, and there's still a humanitarian crisis with Palestine that a lot of the rest of the world is trying to help, but the U.S. government is still on Israel's side. And again, if Biden is the nominee, I think that's something that would hurt him with a few swing states in the presidential election if he is the nominee. Because Biden, even though he's starting to stand up and say no to Netanyahu, no, we're not going to give you this extra funding after all the funding we already given you. No, we're not going to give you these, I think it was 5,000-pound bombs, because even we think they're too dangerous. I think it is something that some Americans think, Biden, you're doing too little too late, because this humanitarian crisis is getting so bad on your watch. And finally, there was an issue that came up within the last week or so with Louisiana of public schools having to have signs and posters of the Ten Commandments. Now, I'm a Christian. I was born and raised Christian. But I still think that it is a bad idea putting Christian posters or teachings in public schools, because there's going to be plenty of lawsuits against it. I think Texas tried it a long time ago. I think other states like Florida and Oklahoma are also going to try it now. But then you might have non-Christian students and families saying, well, if you can put up the Ten Commandments, let's put up, let's say, quotes and passages from the Torah, the Quran, the Vedas, and a few other religious texts. And then obviously you might have, I forgot the name of it. They're like that, they're like a satanic group that trolls religious clubs and schools and all that. And they'll say, well, if you can do 10 Commandments, we're going to have our satanic messages in schools as well. And typically they don't really mean it, it's just as a joke. But it is something that I think is a mistake to do. And sure, we are a majority Christian country. I think like 75% of the population identifies as Christian. But that 20% that's not, I think if they have this whole issue of publishing or posting Christian messages in schools, especially if they're funded through public tax dollars, there's going to be a lot of potential lawsuits that will rise because of it. So I think Louisiana made a mistake doing this, not just because it's unconstitutional, but I think they're going to see a lot of lawsuits come up across the state. It's really going to impact the public schools funding. Now, it's summer vacation right now, but if it continues into the beginning of the next school year, it's really going to hurt schools in Louisiana, which is already, I think, in the bottom third of public education. Like, if you were to rank all the states of public education, I think Louisiana's in the bottom third, or even possibly bottom fourth. So, yeah, that's something to pay attention to later this year when schools come back around at the end of the summer. So, yeah, like I said, the main issue I want to talk about was the presidential debate, but there were a few other topics I also wanted to talk about that have happened over the last month or two. So yeah, what do you guys think? Any comments? Anything you want to share? Anything I didn't talk about that you wanted to know my opinions on? Let me know in the comments. Please like, share, and subscribe. And as I said in a video from about a month or so ago, things are finally settled in my life because we've had some issues, work, family life, and then obviously me moving into a new place that I hadn't really been able to do that much for the first half this year. But I'm hopefully going to have some more content over the second half of the year, since it's the last day of June. So yeah, it's really nice to be able to do one of these again, and hopefully I'll have one or two more later this year as more things come up with politics. So that's all I got to say. Have a good day. All right, take care.